Good. So, hey everyone, what would you say if I said it's more important who you are being now than what you are doing now? Would you say that's maybe some meaningful work? I would. And I think today we're going to dive deep into meaningful work. In fact, I know we're going to dive deep because today I've got Shawn Askinosie. He's the author of the book, funny enough, Meaningful Work. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why now more than ever it's important to focus on your meaningful work and who you be. What's up, Shawn? How are you?
I'm great. As we said before we hit record, as good as can be expected.
That's right. Yeah, all things considered, right? I mean, we're above ground. Hopefully, you're not impacted or personally impacted by the challenges that are going on, at least health-wise, right?
Not health-wise, the company for sure. Last week, we furloughed half of our staff.
Yikes! Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. So that's interesting. So let's dive right there. So how do you make that determination, right? Because you run a chocolate company,
right?
How do you make the determination that we're going to close down or we're going to shut half our people off and furlough them?
Okay. The thing for us is that we are an exempted business by the FDA and the Missouri Department of Health to any shelter-in-place order. So we're considered an essential business because of our place in the food manufacturing world. And some might say, but wait, chocolate, really? Is that essential? We could debate that, but nonetheless. So what the reason I'm mentioning that is because the sort of threshold is the decision wasn't made for me. So I did have the ability to keep people at work if that's what we chose to do. So the way I looked at this is I resorted to the sort of decision-making that we had to make when we survived the recession in 2008. I started my business in 2006 or 7. I was a criminal defense lawyer for 20 years before I started this thing and doing well. And I let all that go, started this business, then comes the recession. So what I did last week and the week before is I started to engage my muscle memory on that decision-making process that was very difficult 11, 12 years ago. And so what I did, and I think many businesses are going through this now, and especially newer businesses and especially younger entrepreneurs are finding this very, very challenging. And that is the following. I believe, at least for me, and I'm sure this applies to others, I had to forecast cash flow. Now, in 2006, I didn't even know what cash flow meant. I didn't know if it was one word, hyphenated, and I had to learn that very fast. And we modified an Excel spreadsheet tool and have used it for 11 years. And I've literally had a cash flow meeting every week for 11 years. And so what I did is I tried to forecast where we would be from a cash flow perspective, which meant that I had to also forecast where we might be from a demand perspective, what kind of revenue we would have, and then make some very, very difficult decisions. And, I would say even in the midst of this fog that there was some clarity about that because I'd been through it before. And there was clarity because I've had a practice, I've spent much of my professional life training for this moment, and as have many of your listeners. And when we train for this moment and it's upon us, we do what we're trained to do. We make difficult decisions, and we try to gain as much clarity as we can, despite the pain. And it is painful, and it has been, for my business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely no easy decision there. I mean, forecasting cash flow, worst case, best case, what's the demand, all of that, definitely not easy. And I'm sure that the people that were furloughed were handled with love and care and compassion. Not just, hey, see you later, alligator, right?
No. It was with prayer and love and compassion. And I would say, I've spent a lot of time, as has my chief operating officer, looking at this stimulus package. And it's quite possible that we'll be able to bring many of those people back on payroll very soon, I hope, and we'll take it from there.
That's good. That's good. Some good news. That's some good news. So you have the history though, but what was that biggest other than cash flow, Shawn, which you mentioned, which I know is super important, right? You have to know it's not about profit and loss right now. It's about cash flow and sustainability and how much blood can we lose until we run out of it.
Right.
What else would you suggest right now that folks do from a more human perspective? How can we prepare as a business owner or as a leader to really prepare for what's now and what's to come?
I think that we're sort of balancing this idea of what can I do practically. So I'm gonna follow the legislation. I'm gonna see what relief in the form of capital might be available to me. That much of which is forgivable. And literally before I hopped on this call, we were just redoubling our efforts to understand what portion of an SBA loan will be forgivable on June 30th. And so there's this real practical aspect that we as business leaders need to be super focused on. What can we do now to inject needed capital into our businesses? But I also believe that there's a side which is also practical in many aspects, and that is, where are we emotionally with all of this? And as leaders, I think it's really incumbent on us to get a hold of ourselves, and no matter where we are on that sort of emotional path, the spiritual path, leadership path, the path of compassion and kindness. We have to make an assessment of where we are as best we can. And when I say as best we can, I mean we need to assess where we are individually. And do the best that we can at that, and then map out the course ahead of us in the middle of fear. I mean, it is what it is. It's fear. It's fog. It's darkness for many people. Now, if you're in the hand sanitizer business, then you're, or other, hey, good for you. But I'm saying for much of us out there, especially, I mean, look, I only had 20 people full time, small business defined. And so the thing about it is that as business leaders, we need to understand where we are, and where we are is a threshold. Poet philosopher John O'Donohue, one of my favorites, talks about threshold a lot, and it's a very, very uncomfortable place to be. Why? Because we don't know where the end is in a threshold. We can't quite see it. We can't look and see that, oh, that's the way to go. Here's the mark on the trail that's going to tell me where to go. We have no reference point for this. And we need to be willing to admit that. We need to be willing to admit that we're uncomfortable with darkness, with fog, with uncertainty, and in our own lives and in the lives of our family and loved ones and our business. And I think the sooner we can admit that and be willing to admit that we're in the middle of a threshold of where we don't know where the end is, we know it will end, but we don't know what that looks like, and we don't know when it'll be, and we don't know what our businesses and lives will be like on the other side of the threshold. There will be another side to the threshold. We know that. We know because we've lived our lives in thresholds. So we just have to rely upon our historical knowledge of those and know that there will be one, and take those decisions from that point, emotionally and spiritually.
Wow. So normally I'd ask you, what do we do? But I'm going to ask you instead, how do we be? Because this is so unusual, Shawn. This is, to your point, right? Absolutely uncomfortable, absolutely unprecedented, absolutely. No matter, I lived through 2008 as well. I mean, that was when I started ramping up my business too, and it was brutal.
Yeah,
it was brutal. But this is different. I mean, this is different because this is global economy. This isn't just my state or my city or my country. This is everybody. So, who do we be?
I love that question. And as I write about in the book, there's this tension between doing and being. We've all experienced it. And depending on where we are in our lives and in the cycle of our business and the cycle of our path, we've experienced, sometimes that tension is greater, sometimes it's less. And when I was on this path 20 years ago, I started going to a monastery near my house called Assumption Abbey, which is a Trappist monastery. I'm still very involved there. In fact, I talked to the monks there the day before yesterday. My spiritual director is 90 years old and there at the monastery. And I was talking with him about the exact thing we're talking about right now. And one of the things they impressed upon me years ago, as I became more involved in the monastery as a family brother, was that I needed in my movement, in my aspirations, in my ambition, in my building of a business, that I needed to learn to live a life of being inserted by doing, and not a life of doing inserted by being. And when I first heard that, I was like, come on, I'm trying to build a business. I'm traveling all over the world. I need to have profit. I need to, become bigger and that, but because I was committed to their help to me, I did what I could to take that to heart and to live it. And so right now, the place I think that's important in the being inserted by doing is to peel one layer from that and say, well, what does that mean now? And I think now what that means is surrender. And that is so hard for a hard charging, driving entrepreneur, leader, person that signs payroll checks. I don't mean give up. That's not what I mean by surrender. What I mean by surrender is to recognize where we are and to do what we can to let go of what it is that we think that we need and stop resisting, and to not push away the pain that is here and is coming, and to not try to grab hold of the things that we think are going to fulfill us and make us happy, like, a bigger house and better car and, a greater debt to equity ratio. And we have to surrender those things, or they will be surrendered for us, and it will be more painful if we don't start working on that now.
Wow. Surrender. Different way of looking at that. But yeah, that's like the old parable, right? The gorilla that's got his hand stuck in the on the banana, and if he'd let go, he'd be safe.
Right.
But if he doesn't, he's stuck.
That's right.
And I think that's kind of where many of us are today, is we're stuck in between.
Yes, we are. And that's what I mean by, there are so many metaphors, whether if you're a pilot, we're definitely not in VFR right now. We're flying on instruments. And this is also what I mean by muscle memory. Often when we're in darkness of any kind, the first reaction is panic. I get that. I understand. But I think there are some practical things we can do. We can learn how to breathe. We can take deep breaths. We can find a friend that is someone that we can rely on, someone who's wise, an elder in the community that we can call and talk to. And we can take a step back. Maybe to have a breath of panic is fine, but then take a deep breath and rely on what we know. So many of your listeners have, written mission statements. They've read a lot of books. They've been in training. And there's a certain aspect of, so all of these things that we wrote, all the mission statements, even for me, the vocation, all of these guidelines and guiding principles that we follow in our companies. Well, there was, whether you wrote it or a team or your partners or you yourself, there was a core, there was an essence to your character that birthed those guiding principles of your company and of your business. And even if the business is changed and it doesn't look the same on the other side of this threshold, there is an essence and a core that will not change. It was that same essence that wrote the mission statement. Now is your chance to live it. Now is your chance to live it in what can be pain and suffering. And boy, that sounds like fun. No, it isn't, but we're going to be the better for it. We're going to be the better for it. And we must remember that there is an essence that will not change. It won't. And we have to rely on that, even if we lose our business.
Yeah, I think that's so important, is that when broken down and everything is stripped away, all we have left is that core. All we have left is that essence, that energy, if you will, that idea, that value. But I would also flip that over and say that organizations that their sole purpose is to make money now are hurting the worst, because there is no meaning. There is no purpose. If they're just out there just trying to sell, nobody wants to hear that. I mean, I see it all the time. In fact, I've written some letters to my team about the fact that, people need you to lead with your heart, with humility, with helpfulness.
Yes.
And to be heard, because I think that's what's missing, in that the time to sell is after we've served the fundamental need, the fundamental purpose of people. And right now it's being heard, because so many are not, right? The news is shouting over us.
Yes.
It's not talking with us. And I think that's the scary thing here, Shawn. So as a business owner, I mean, how do you sift through all the noise that's out there to find the truth and to find your essence again?
Well, one of the things I do is I try to very specifically limit my news intake. And it's the news is, at this point, and of course at many points in our culture, addictive, and it distracts us, and it produces it re-triggers panic and fear much of the time. And the panic and fear that we feel is, at a very practical level, diminishes our own immune capacity if and when we get sick with this virus. So the first thing I do is just I try to limit my news intake, and that can be hard too, especially when we're really trying to follow, the stimulus package and the SBA and loan forgiveness and all that stuff. But so that's one thing. The other thing that I do is I have had a spiritual practice 5 days a week for many years. And the temptation, even for me, especially in some of this time, is, oh, well, I don't need to do that this morning. I've got to get to the office, and I'm breathing from here up. I'm not breathing deep from my abdomen. And I'm like, okay, breathe. I need to get to the office. I need to do that. I'll do my spiritual practice tomorrow. No. This is when I need to do it the most. This is when I really need to do it. And so I don't let that temptation move me off of my, some would say, ritual or practice, daily schedule. So I keep doing those things. That grounds me to just no end. The other thing I do from a practical standpoint is more exercise. And so I walk a lot, more exercise, new routines. And this keeps me really grounded. And then finally, I find someone and have people that I can confess my own fears and my own weaknesses. And I know that those people will answer my questions with compassion. And that's what I'm doing. I'm also not trying to say to myself, well, I'm just waiting for X. When this happens, whatever that may be, fill in the blank, then it's going to be okay. I'm not waiting for that. I'm not waiting for that. I have to be okay now. I have to be okay right now, talking to you about this important issue that we face in our day. And that's okay right now.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have is it right now. We have to, more than anything, I would lead with that first one about being present now, like be here right now.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like for you.
Ram Dass. Good.
Yeah.
Right? There you go.
Be here now. Right.
Yeah.
And I like that though, limiting your news intake. I do that too. And I try to, I purposely I haven't had cable for a long time because it doesn't help me at all.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that daily practice, I need to get back to that, Shawn. So thank you for that reminder.
Mm-hmm.
I've missed that one. More walking, absolutely. And then finding people to share your fears with that will respond with compassion, I think is really important, because there are certainly some people that will feed your anxiety and there are people that will feed your soul.
Yes.
You have to find those that are going to help feed your soul, feed your heart, which will then drive your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the miss, right?
Yeah. And I think there are people who we will seek out for solutions. But what I'm talking about in that is I want people who aren't going to, give me the bullet point answers, but I want to talk to people who are going to treat me with compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what we need.
Yeah.
Than anything right now, because the answer, if the answer were obvious, I think most of us would know it. Let's be clear, right? Well, anybody listening to this is smart. It's not that they don't know an answer if there's one available, but this is like, this is trigonometry for those of us that have had basic algebra. This is not easy, right? There are tables that we've never seen, numbers that we can't even imagine some of this stuff. And yet, if we slow down and we be present, we recognize there's some things we can control.
The other thing, yes, and I could say this. I've traveled a lot in the last 10 years buying cocoa beans around the world directly from farmers, Tanzania, Philippines, Ecuador, Amazon. And one of the things that I was struck with last week is I've spent a lot of time observing just life on the edge. And I've seen it especially in Tanzania, going to visit clinics and hospitals in really remote villages that would not resemble a clinic here, seeing children who are suffering from HIV AIDS that are, 8, 9, 10 years old with basically no medication, no relief from pain. And I've seen these farmers and their families just live on the edge in much the way that we are trying to adapt to this life of uncertainty now. But the thing is, I have for now almost 15 years had the gift of being able to observe these people live in joy right in the middle of sorrow and suffering. And it's a mystery. And it's not a mystery to be solved. It's a mystery to observe, learn from, and try to replicate. And so, I've often said that, in the next century, the people of Africa will become missionaries to the United States, and they will teach us ways to live and to worship. And now I see that more true than ever, because they're dying from malaria, they're dying from HIV, they're dying from Ebola, they're dying. They live with this life of uncertainty and have for centuries. And I believe that there's lessons to be learned about how we can find joy in the middle of the most sorrowful life imaginable. And it is possible. And I've seen it with my own eyes, and I consider it to be one of the greatest gifts I've received. And I consider it such a great gift that if my business is lost in this crisis, the gift that I've received from what I just mentioned will not be lost. It's never lost. It's always going to be right here, no matter what, always. And nothing will take that away.
So you found your essence.
Yeah, absolutely. I've encountered the divine. I can say that. It's even more than that. I have witnessed the divine, and in a most unlikely place, in a village in far remote Tanzania. And what it taught me is that I've seen it, I've experienced it, and I don't have to go to Tanzania, but it helps, for me, because I was a neophyte, and so we're going to have these opportunities now, Phil. We're living lives of uncertainty, and we're going to learn how to experience joy in ways that we had not imagined 3 months ago. We have that chance to learn.
Yeah. And it's up to us to take the chance. I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? In the I would say the only thing certain is that we always have had a choice.
Mm-hmm.
We always will have a choice. And it's just up to us to choose it. Because if we don't, we can flounder, we can spin, we can be out of control and not going to help anybody, and especially ourselves.
That's right. I mean, the spinning out of control that you said will ultimately lead to misery, really. And we have to try to stop that for ourselves and those around us.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book, because I think it's important. We talked about now, but let's talk a little bit about your book, because I think it could help a lot of people. I think there's a lot there in meaningful work. And one of the things that you talk about in there is something really important to me, and that is kinship and community. How is that? How did that come about? Like, where did that become a kernel? Because for me, when I think about my core values, connection is one at my core. And I would say that's kind of a combination of the two words there for me anyway, maybe not for everybody, but for me it is. So how did that come about? And how did you find that was part of your essence, Shawn?
Of course, I heard kinship, I've heard of that word, but where it really became real to me is in reading the story of Father Greg Boyle, Jesuit priest in Los Angeles who's worked with gangs for nearly 40 years. And his book, Tattoos on the Heart, really impressed me. And so I then thought, this is, I can name this that I'm feeling, and the name is kinship. It's kinship with the farmers that I just spoke about. The farmers in this little village last week wanted to know how I was. They were worried about me and my family, and they wanted me to send them a video, which I did on WhatsApp. Then they sent me a video to let me know how much they cared about me. That's kinship. That's not about business. One of the things we say here, and I write about in the book, is I say, it's not about the chocolate. It's about the chocolate. So that's not about business. That was about them being in kinship with me, in community with me. And so this idea of community, the idea of kinship, and another word that I use a lot is mutuality, means that I am not the service provider and the people in Africa or the Philippines or wherever are the service recipients. What it means is that we're mutual. It means that I'm shoulder to shoulder with them, and I'm not the teacher, I'm not the student. We're together. We're learning from each other. We're teaching each other in mutuality. And another way of explaining this is that when you see yourself in that way, and really it's a way of humility, then you have the chance to receive compassion and to express it to others. So what we're talking about here in kinship, in community, is compassion and kindness. You can't live in community without those things, without humility, compassion, and kindness. And so this is the core and the essence of who we are as a business. And, just today, in the last few days, I've been checking on a school lunch program in the Philippines that we have at a school. We've been doing this for years. It's a sustainable school lunch program. Well, they're not in school because of this. because of the coronavirus. Well, I had to make sure that we were doing something for the children who were severely malnourished. So we are, and the teachers are delivering rice and milk to those families. And, we have a preschool in Tanzania that just opened for 300 kids that the farmers are running, and we have to check on that. This is mutuality. They're checking on me, I'm checking on them, and that's what this is about.
Yeah. And I would say that mutuality really is the essence of leadership and the essence of sellership when I really think about it, right? Because if it's not mutual, if it's not value for value, nothing really happens. I mean, then I'm convincing you, well, you should buy coffee.
Yeah, right.
Well, why? Well, because I want you to, right? And I think we are getting back to that essence. I think that's really important that we remember that mutuality, because that at the core, that is why business takes place. That as a leader, that is why people follow you, is not because you will them and tell them you must follow me, but because they know your heart and they know your mutual, you benefit, they benefit, and we should be checking on each other to see that. So, yeah.
I mean, it's this whole thing is not without pain, but if we act and behave as you just mentioned, and if we behave in a idea of mutuality, then paradoxically, the pain is lessened and we find moments of joy. So that is why when I say, it's not about the chocolate, it's about the chocolate, what I'm saying is the product and service that you make is inseparable from who you are. It's inseparable from your core, or from, as Merton would say, your true self. And so if that's true, then this is our time. This is the chance. This is the chance to show it, to live it. As when you held up the coffee cup, I mean, I'm just telling you, no, I'm giving you me, Shawn, my true self, with everything that I have. That's what this is about.
Yeah. That's, and I would argue now more than ever, more important. And hopefully, maybe that's what this is all about, Shawn.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all about stripping it away, right? And getting back to who we really are. Sharing the community of coffee, not the coffee itself.
Exactly.
The kinship of coffee.
Yes.
Wonderful. Or the kinship of chocolate, if you will.
Yes, please.
Askinosie chocolate, right?
Yes. Bless you.
Absolutely, right? So, which, by the way, your chocolate is wonderful. It's very nice. Thank you for sending along a bar of that. It was very good, and I shared it, and it's wonderful. So thank you.
Good.
Thank you for sharing you with me. So with that, I really like that last part that you said there. The product and the service you make is inseparable from who you are. Mm-hmm. From yourself. And I think that's really important. And I think that's a big message for these times. But if there's one more way maybe that you haven't shared, one more rule, one more story that you have on how to do, how to be, right? Mm-hmm. How to be more meaningful work, how to go on that quest to do the great business and find our calling and feed our soul. What would that be, Shawn?
It would be that what I'm going to say is completely counterintuitive, but I'm speaking to your listener out there who's really suffering and struggling right now and afraid, but healthy and really struggling. And what I'm saying to you is I'm saying, find someone who needs you and serve them. And maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's someone who's suffering more than you, someone really, really struggling, and serve that person and continue to serve them over and over and over again. And the paradox is, as Gandhi said, you will find yourself. So when we lose ourselves in the service of others is when we find ourselves, says Gandhi and Christ and others. And so the one thing that I would wish that someone would take away from our conversation today is find somebody who needs you, serve them, and find joy and clarity in your own struggle, panic, and fear that you might yourself feel now. This is the mystery. It's the paradox. Find somebody. I've said this for years, but guess what? Now it's so easy. We don't have to search for someone who needs us. They're at arm's length. They're on the phone. They're somebody that we can talk to on Skype. We must do this for each other. We have to.
Wow. That's a great lesson. It's a great way to find our meaningful work. It's a great way to be who the world needs us to be, to find someone who's struggling and to serve them over and over again, and then find the joy in the service. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, Shawn. Really, really beautiful. So we could talk for hours, but if people wanted to give you some feedback or to connect with you or to have a conversation, knowing you have a business to run, where would that be, Shawn? Where would you like them to go?
I have a blog that I haven't written on lately, but it's ShawnAskinosie.com. And, but my email address is in the book too. And it's hello@ShawnAskinosie.com. People can reach me there. I'm on LinkedIn. And, of course, we're still making and shipping chocolate. So people can order chocolate on Askinosie.com if they would like, and we'll ship it out. And it's something that we would deeply appreciate.
Wow. That's awesome, Shawn. Thank you for sharing all of that with us today. Thank you for sharing your chocolate, reminding us that it is not about the chocolate. It's all about the chocolate. That's so good. So, Shawn, thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for being someone to give us joy today. I so appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
God be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.